If your industry as a whole made a true effort to fix the culture of releasing busted, unfinished games, us consumers would be more than happy to pay full price. This isn't an us problem, this is a your industry problem. Stop burning us, and we'll support you better. So in a recent interview, the developer of the game Days Gone, John Garvin, made a statement that while he meant well, it infuriated me and many others.
Because I do have an opinion on something that your audience might find of interest.
Okay.
And it might piss some of them off. If you love a game, buy it at fucking full price. I can't tell you how many times I've seen gamers say, yeah, I got that on sale.
But how do you know you love a game
whatever.
until you've played it?
I'm just saying you don't, but don't complain if a game doesn't get a sequel if it wasn't supported at launch.
And that one statement is all it took for me to look into the entirety of the idea of pre-ordering games rather than purchasing them after they've already released. And you know it's going to be a serious video when I'm wearing the beanie and not the hat. I am like really in the mood for this video right now, so I just grabbed the first thing to cover up my messy hair that I could find, and I couldn't find my hat. So before we get started, understand that this is not an attack on John Garvin. He made a statement that while me and many other people disagree with it, he came off in the interview as a really chill person. He seems like a really cool guy. Don't send any hate to him. You can hate the opinion that he holds, but don't hate the person that's holding the opinion. So the idea of a pre-order is pretty simple. You pay for a game before it's released based entirely on trust and trailers. If the game ends up being a buggy mess or simply not worth $60 or $70 now to you, then that's on you. Sure, you can return them to certain retailers, but this is a rare case, and even the big dog of gaming stores, GameStop, will not let you return a sealed game that you have already opened. So obviously the issue with all of this is that you don't know if the game that you're pre-ordering is actually worth your money or not. Yes, you have reviews, but as we've seen with certain games like The Last of Us 2, those reviews come from people who are in their industry. They have a reason to be biased in certain cases. Now, I'm not saying that they were paid off or anything like that when it comes to The Last of Us 2. I'm simply saying the Metacritic scores did not really line up between users and, professional game reviewers. And always relying on game reviewers isn't the best idea when you have people like IGN giving a Pokemon game that's based in a place surrounded by water on a series of islands, giving the game a low score because there was too much water. I'm sure you can understand why you prefer reviews from other gamers and people that you can trust because they're not being paid to review this game. So sure, you have the game trailer, you have the screenshots, but what you don't have is the game itself. Sometimes they release demos, but demos can be very deceiving. I'm not saying that this is always the case. Some of my favorite games, which I plan on covering one very soon, have come because I played the demo of the game first and was like, holy god, I want this game. Then I ended up buying it, and I ended up loving the game. Demos can do a lot for you, but they can, like I said, be misleading, and sometimes a demo can lead you to believe that the game isn't going to be full of bugs, Cyberpunk. Not that that game had a demo, it's just the first thing I could think of. Now, in this way, I can also see where John is coming from. The idea that a game needs to be supported, and day one sales are very important. But at the same time, this is Days Gone. It's not a sequel to another game. It's the first game in what could potentially be a series. No one's played the series before. It's a new thing. So pre-orders can be a lot lower. It's not like Devil May Cry releasing a new game and you're going to have all these pre-orders for it. Or God of War, one game that he actually referenced in that interview. That's a series that has been established since the era of the PlayStation 2 and has been a big thing since the beginning. The fact that the new God of War did so well in sales is entirely due to the hype of God of War itself. Not because of the trailers, not because of the screenshots. Yes, those help tremendously, especially for people that didn't play the other God of Wars. They're looking at the screenshots and these trailers, and it looks cool, and even those who were fans of the game beforehand are going to like seeing these. But if you loved the first trilogy, and you loved all of the original God of War games, let's be honest, you were probably going to pick it up anyways. But at the same time, John is blaming this whole the whole problem on customers not buying the games in the first place. You cannot blame that on the customer. If the customer wasn't attracted to your marketing, that falls to your publisher who did your marketing. Now, another thing that he said on Twitter is that, well, The issue isn't that they didn't necessarily pre-order it, it's the fact that they picked it up a year or two later on PlayStation Now or on sale, and now they're wondering why it doesn't have a sequel. Again, you can't necessarily blame that on them, because they are still supporting the game. Yes, you make less money if you sell a game on sale, or if you do it through PlayStation Now, but they still picked up the game, and they're still supporting the game, talking about it to their friends, possibly streaming on Twitch or doing videos on it. I tend to do videos on games that released a long time ago, because I enjoy doing them. And it's fun to go back and see older games that you didn't really give a chance beforehand. You can't rely on everyone that's going to pre-order your game, and yeah, the idea of a sequel being in the works right after a game releases is cool, but it doesn't always happen that way. There are a lot of games that don't start their development for their sequel until way later. Skyrim released, I think, 11 years ago now, maybe 12. I think it's just 11 years, because it released on 11/11/11. So, yeah, about 11 years ago. And they didn't start working on the sequel right away. They were working on Fallout 4. Those were actually being made around the same time. From what I understand, they picked up Fallout 4, like, near the end of Skyrim's development. And they didn't start working on the next Elder Scrolls for a while. So, it can take some time for that to happen. And yeah, they were going to do it anyway. Skyrim did have a lot of pre-orders. It did well at the beginning. But even if it didn't, during that time period, between the end of development and release, and the development of the new game, there was plenty of time for those game developers to go, well, hold on a minute, it's not selling that well. But it was. Because during that time period, it kept going. For years, Skyrim has been selling for a long time, and many other games like it. And even if it had a crappy launch, word of mouth can really help boost a game. So this whole thing started when John was asked during the interview if he thinks that his game gaining traction on PlayStation Now, because it's on there now, you can play it if you have PlayStation Now, I've said the word now way too many times in this sentence, that the game is getting traction, so there's a good chance of a sequel. And he basically said, no, that doesn't help. That's not necessarily true. Gaining traction is still gaining traction. There are a lot of games that didn't get sequels for a long period of time. For off the top of my head, look at Shenmue. Shenmue 3 is so far off from the first two games that originally released. It's because that series started gaining more and more traction, kind of as a meme, but it gained it regardless. And years afterwards, when they thought the idea of a sequel was dead, now they can actually work on it again. Because there's enough interest in another game that they were able to work on Shenmue 3 and do it again and make a sequel. Sure, the idea of Days Gone having a sequel right now isn't really in the book, but if the game keeps getting more popular, and especially with it having more access to players through services like PlayStation Now, and it's also going to be coming to PC, the traction can grow. It might not even be this year, but the game could have its moment to blow up. And if it does, you have a heavy shot at another sequel. Of course, John isn't with the developers anymore. He has moved on. I think it's been like 2 years since he worked there. So when I'm saying I do mean the developers. Again, this is not a slight towards John. I don't know what he's doing now. Again, I don't know a whole lot about the guy. I do hope he's doing well wherever he is. But if he was hoping that even as no longer a part of the company that would get a sequel, there's still a chance of that. Yes, it was already shut down now, but it can still happen again in the future. And not every game needs a sequel. So now I want to go into the idea that if you buy the game after the fact, then you can't complain. But some of my favorite games were found from bargain bins. Games that people had just given up on, and they're super cheap now, that GameStop, or back in the day, Rhino Games, would put them in their bargain bin section, and, my parents would buy games from that section. And I actually remember, this is my original copy of Xenosaga. It's also on the TV back there. This game was picked up as a bargain bin game, and became one of my favorite childhood games. Yeah, it was way after the fact. But that doesn't mean that I can't love it now, in which the series would continue. Now, do I think Xenosaga is going to be getting a sequel anytime soon? No. I'm just one guy. I'm one really nostalgic guy for this game. And that's not enough. But if I started making videos on it, and bringing it up on Twitter, and I was actually a big influencer instead of this small YouTuber, there'd be a chance for that. Look at Among Us. That game is popular. I can't stand seeing it everywhere personally, but it blew up well after it released. That wasn't a new release that just blew up out of nowhere. That was an older game. No, it's not as old as PS2 era. It wasn't that old, but it had been out for a while and wasn't really that big. And it just blew up out of nowhere, largely due to content creators that discovered the game and like, holy god, we love this. And I could easily see a sequel to Among Us releasing within the near future. That game, I guarantee you, the developers are like, okay, well, this didn't do that great. We probably shouldn't... My phone went off. Maybe we shouldn't continue with the development of, a second game or anything like that. But it blew up out of nowhere. There's no way that they expected that to happen, and it's a great thing that it did. And Days Gone could see the same thing, especially with it coming to a new market like PC. So I want to talk about the consumer side of things on this. When I had mentioned at the beginning that you're basically buying something based on a promise, on trailers and screenshots, it's not just that problem. You're buying something at the peak of its price, when you know for a fact, unless it's a Nintendo game, that the price is going to go down with time. There have been plenty of games that I was interested in, but thought the price was just too high for me to want to buy it, and picked it up later at a cheaper price and ended up loving it, and some of those games ended up getting sequels. Octopath Traveler was one of those games that looked really cool to me. I love RPGs, but I just couldn't justify the price for. It released on Game Pass, a very similar service to PlayStation Now. In my opinion, it's better, but I'm not getting into that console war crap. I have Game Pass on PC, for God's sake. I didn't play it on the Xbox, which I do have out in the living room. But I picked it up through Game Pass, and I have been loving Octopath Traveler, and now I'm like, hey, I could have paid full price for this. And if the game ever leaves Game Pass, which all games do eventually, well, I guess not all of them, but if it eventually leaves Game Pass, and I'm not done with that game, I'm going to buy it. And that game, I believe, is still the same price it was at release. And I'm still going to buy it because I love that game. It's been really fun to play through, even though I haven't had a whole lot of time to play games for myself lately. Days Gone looks like just another zombie game. And in the marketing, that's also kind of how it comes across. Yes, they show some unique things in the marketing, but I don't think it was done the best to show that it was more unique. And even then, the zombie genre is kind of overplayed. So getting your game to sell well, it was going to take a bit of a fight to begin with. Not only that, but the game released with a fair amount of bugs, which has been a very common occurrence in the gaming industry. Like that tweet I showed at the very beginning of this whole thing. If your industry as a whole made a true effort to fix the culture of releasing busted, unfinished games, us consumers would be more than happy to pay full price. And that is very, very true. I think I used to pre-order a lot more games when I was younger, when I had more of a faith in the developers that those games would be promised on, that they promised would actually deliver on. But now we don't have that. We have games like Fallout 76, like Cyberpunk, like the entirety of the Assassin's Creed franchise, aside from Valhalla. That game actually was pretty good at release. Good job on you guys. The gaming industry as a whole is releasing games that are super buggy, and Days Gone was certainly one of those. It wasn't as bad as a Cyberpunk, it wasn't as bad as a Fallout 76, but it still wasn't the best. And you also have games that overpromise. Look at No Man's Sky. That game today is fantastic. They have delivered on just about everything that they promised. Actually, they've delivered on more than what they promised, but I think every promise has been fulfilled as well. But that game was overhyped and overmarketed and lied about. Say what you want about Sean Murray having his issues and social anxiety. In the end, they were still lies. And they were lies that thousands, if not millions of people bought and pre-ordered. Now you could make the argument, well, hold on a minute. My company hasn't done that. Why am I being affected the same way? Just because it hasn't been your company, it's still the same industry. And I actually agree. Nintendo is one of the only companies I will pre-order games from because they haven't hurt me like that. I haven't pre-ordered a game from just about any Switch exclusive and been disappointed by it, or felt like I had been lied to or cheated. So I agree, some developers being treated poorly or unfairly because other developers suck, I cannot agree with that. That isn't a good thing that consumers do. But they do it anyways, because you're all a part of the same industry in the end. And yes, it sucks when your neighbor is over there promising to give you gold and instead they just fling shit out your window. It sucks that you're the one who's paying the price for it. But if you can show that you as a single developer can make big promises and deliver on them, then that is an amazing thing and will help the industry as a whole. And as a developer that produces exclusive games for a platform, it will make people feel trusted in Sony. As any exclusive game released on Sony, they would feel much more comfortable pre-ordering games from the PlayStation Network exclusives. If the majority of the games that they've pre-ordered, they didn't feel burned on. But for the most part, I agree with a lot of people. Pre-ordering games just isn't really there for me. And most games that I'm excited for, I don't pre-order. I didn't pre-order Cyberpunk. I did end up buying it despite all of the glitches. But I didn't pre-order it because I didn't have that much things towards it. I didn't have that much of an opinion that this game is going to be awesome. There are some games that I am super, super stoked for that I don't pre-order simply because I know that I can pick it up at a later date after the reviews are out and see if it's actually going to perform well. It is rare that I pre-order things anymore. I still pre-order Assassin's Creed games despite all of their issues because I've beaten every single Assassin's Creed game. Still working my way through Valhalla. I am honestly just going to pre-order the next one because I want to say that I've beaten every Assassin's Creed game. But as a general, I feel like out of all of my friends, I probably pre-order the games the most because I see all of these issues in the gaming industry, and a lot of other games too, even if they're not big on keeping up with noobs, even if they never heard of the John Garvin thing with his interview. They're still going to feel the ripple wave effects of buying or pre-ordering games at release and seeing all this negativity around it, and they're going to stop doing it. You can't base your entire company's career off of the pre-orders. And you can't judge a game's success purely off of the pre-orders. Like I said, games like Among Us. There are many others out there, my brain isn't going right now, that might not have done well at the beginning, but blew up like hell afterwards. If I thought of my YouTube career the same way that some developers, and I'm sorry, John, again, not an attack on you, if I thought of my stuff on YouTube the same way that he did, I would have quit a long time ago, because my first videos that I put out were awful. I go back and look at those and they're awful, but despite that, they got low views. They got low interactions, low comments, and low subscriber counts. I'm sitting here right now with exactly 236 subscribers on my second channel, Junk Seeker, and 194 on this channel, after 2 years, with nearly 300 videos across both channels. But I'm still pushing. I'm actually changing up my content. This isn't the kind of stuff that I usually make, but I'm working on it, and I am pushing my way forward to try and be successful. I am trying to work on my own sequel. My older videos, and even some that I've put out recently, I go back and I'm not proud of them. And I see that they did not do exceptionally well. But that doesn't stop me from trying. Yes, Days Gone might actually be done for. There might not be a sequel. But John and everybody else there should still feel proud of their game and take pride in what they did and move forward to their spiritual sequel. It might not be in the same franchise. It might not be about mowing down zombies. But continue your efforts into the next game, working as hard as you can to make it the best thing that you can. If this game blows up, then that is amazing. Use the skills that you learned developing the game after Days Gone to work on the next one, and just hope for the day that that happens. I'm in that phase. I'm hoping for the day that my channel just blows up and I'm up there shaking hands with JonTron and Scott the Woz and all of my favorite people on YouTube. But for all I know, that's never going to happen. And just like with Days Gone, we have no idea if it's ever going to blow up enough to get a sequel. And I have no idea if I'm ever going to blow up enough to actually see a paycheck from YouTube. Okay, so it's been a few days. I found my hat. The room is a mess. But I had to cut myself off here. First off, I was rambling for way too long. I want to go back and try to cut some stuff out. At this point, I already have the video edited. I've been sitting on it for a few days, and I think I rambled for way too long. So sorry about that. But I wanted to bring up something that just happened. And it made me happy that I sat on this video instead of publishing it right away, even though I probably should have. Days Gone 2 is on change.org. Whoop-de-doo! Yeah, so change.org, if you guys don't know, it's like an online petition site. It's so you can, like, sign a petition to have things changed, and it rarely has much of an impact. But it can really show companies, or individuals, what people want out of certain things. And on change.org, there's a thing going for Days Gone 2 that is currently at 95,084 signatures. It blew up after I recorded that initial thing, and is still going. So no, you don't have to buy the game ahead of time. You don't have to pay full price. A lot of these people, I guarantee you, started this petition because they played it through PS Plus and fell in love with the game. Your game can have a life after the release. Just because they didn't buy it at $60 doesn't mean that there's not a way to show interest to the company, to the developers, that they want a sequel. That is 95,000 people that actually bothered to make an account on change.org and sign this thing. So I just wanted to mention that. Let's go ahead and get back to past me rambling on about nothing because he was too excited to talk about it. So in the end, my opinion on pre-orders is I still don't like doing them. Yes, they can be a huge thing for game developers, and if there's a game developer that has always been good to you in the past, has always produced just AAA amazing games that you go back and play all the time, and you always play with your friends and recommend to your friends, and you just like everything that they put out, and they're releasing a new game that you're interested in, pre-order it. It's going to help them, and it's going to help them continue to make games that you love. But if it's a game that you know little about, and it's like from a developer that you've maybe never even played a game from before, I can't recommend, personally, in my opinion, pre-ordering that game. Because you don't know how the end result is going to be, and you might just get burned. So I know that this was a very different video. I'm trying out some new things on the channel. This isn't going to be a super common thing unless you guys actually really like it, and I might actually continue doing these little rants. But I like the idea of doing more semi-scripted content. I have a video potentially coming out about that either before or after this one releases. You might have already seen that video. Alright, little side note here. I'm not going to be producing a video specifically for that. My channel is changing. I'm going to be going to a lot more scripted and more entertaining content, in my opinion. The Let's Plays and stuff are gone. I think I mentioned that here. But content is going to take longer for me to put out. It's going to take longer to produce more videos. But yes, I am completely changing up the channel, so consider this kind of that announcement, and thank you for watching to the end. Where I'm wanting to do a whole rebranding of the channel. The days of me playing a game for 30 minutes, editing it down to 10 and pushing it out are done. As much as I enjoyed doing that, I don't think you guys enjoyed it, and looking back, I'm not entirely proud of all the content that I've made, and I would like to move forward on that. This is a very different thing, so please, if you like it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you want to see more of this. Because it's interesting, and right now, when the flames are stoked, it's a great thing for me to sit down and make. I literally just got home from work. I looked at this whole incident yesterday, and I got thinking about it again on the drive home, and just a fire burned in me. I'm still in my work uniform. I was considering maybe making this video, maybe putting it off until another project I'm currently working on is done, and not focus on making 2 projects at once. But the fire was still in me, and I wanted to get it out while it was still there, while I still had the passion for what I was talking about. So I set up my fancy studio lights, I set up all of this stuff in about 5 minutes as I wanted to get it going. I found my hat on my beanie on the floor in the living room, and sat down, did a little bit more research, and here we are. So I know I'm rambling. I don't know exactly how this video is going to end up. Hopefully it turns out as something somewhat cohesive. But again, if you guys enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching to the end. If I have any outtakes, which I'm sure I have a few, I'll throw them on here. Thank you guys for watching. If your industry as a whole, busted unfinished games, us consumers would, okay. So in a recent statement, the developer of Jane, and not every game needs a sequel. Yeah, your game is beginning a lot of traction, thanks to PlayStation now. But that doesn't mean, cut that segment. Might not be the best idea, because you don't know what kind of stock you need. because you don't know what kind of stock you actually need.